This is the business culture of agriculture. My name is Andy Junkin. With me tonight is Dr. Dennis Murphy from Penn State University. Dennis, tell us about your position at Penn State University and also what you do beyond that.
Well, I'm the nationwide insurance professor of agricultural safety and health. That's my official title, but what my real work is, I'm the extension safety specialist in Penn State. But like many people in my position, we also do research and we teach. So I do all three missions in ag safety for Penn State University.
And tell us your background, Dennis. I think it's kind of a unique story.
Well, I grew up in Illinois. But
Farmersville, Illinois, right?
Farmersville, Illinois, yes. That's the name of my hometown, and so there were mostly farmers. But my dad was also the local undertaker, funeral director, and so we had a farm outside of town. We had a little bit of property behind the house. We had horses and hogs behind the house, and then about 5 miles out of town, we had a 200-acre farm. We had livestock and grain with it. And so we grew up, and in those days you did not have EMTs or paramedics, at least servicing that area. So we also ran the ambulance service. And our hometown was also the site of the second largest underground coal mine in Illinois. And so my hometown is on old Route 66. And so we had a lot of accidents of coal trucks pulling onto a highway. We had farming accidents around us, and so that's just the way we grew up. And so we had people in our house. We lived where we worked, just like farmers do today. Our house that we grew up in was the funeral home, and when we had a funeral, we would have to go upstairs when we were little kids and get on a bed, and we couldn't move, could not get off the bed. So that's sort of the way that I grew up. And I think it's interesting, when I went to college, I knew I wanted to be in agriculture. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't think I wanted to be a teacher. But my last year in college, I just stumbled into this course called Agricultural Accident Prevention. And as soon as I saw that title, I knew that was something I could be interested in, because I had been, I'd had friends killed. I had relatives killed, and from accidents, farm accidents and motor vehicle accidents. And I just thought, well, I've been helping to bury people. Maybe I could help to try to prevent some things. And I took that course and fell in love with the whole idea of agricultural safety. And so that has been my career.
And so what kind of farm safety programs have you been spearheading, and what that are still going on to this day?
Well, we've done a lot of research in tractor stability issues. I don't know why we can't provide farmers with real-time stability information on their tractors. An airplane pilot, has guidance systems to let you know that the plane is level. Why can't we tell farmers that they're getting close to turning their tractor over? And we can do those things, but there's a lot of liability issues with doing those sorts of things. So we keep doing research that tries to, and we know that farmers will ignore a lot of information because they operate by the seat of their pants. They start getting, if their butt starts to slip out of the seat, that's when they know that they're getting on a steep slope. Well, that may be too late. So we're doing a lot of research with sort of human factors engineering of putting different types of signals and warning systems or educational systems, and seeing how a farmer will react to that. So that's ongoing research right now that we're not finished with. We've also done a lot of research with ventilating manure storages. Pennsylvania is a dairy state. We have a lot of manure storage. We keep losing people in manure storages. And the thing is that we know that a farmer will enter into that storage when the storage is empty, of course, when it's being cleaned out or something gets into it. And so we have done a lot of work. We have an international standard developed a few years ago to help building designers, facility planners of dairy facilities, to how to design a manure pit with ventilation systems. We've also do a lot with youth. We are running a project called Safety in Agriculture for Youth. We got a national level steering committee together. Brought federal government together, all the major farm organizational players, ag education, the National Council of Ag Educators, groups like that, and trying to get everybody to work together for the same purpose, to have the same message when it comes to youth safety. And we just recently, this past year, we developed these belief statements and guiding principles for youth safety. So we think that's been a really good project. I've got a number. We also have a national program called National Safe Tractor Machinery Operation Program. That's the program that allows 14 and 15-year-olds in the U.S. To be hired operators of tractors and machinery. Department of Labor regulations say that you have to be at least 16 to do a lot of things in agriculture unless you've had very specific training. And the only training that is offered is with tractors and machinery. And so we developed a program that is being used nationally. It has been used in Canada, we know, and 2 or 3 provinces in Canada, as well as I think a couple of other countries. So we have just a lot of different programs like that that cut across generations and target audiences.
So if you're, let's say you're in a small town in Wisconsin and it's pretty hard to get good hired help. Is there a way that a couple dairy farmers can get together and put on a training course with the National Safety Training Program? How would they be doing that?
Sure. There's ways there, and there are resources to help farmers do that. Even in Wisconsin, there's a National Children's Center for Agricultural and Rural Health and Safety. They're located there in Marshville, Wisconsin. They do programs. The Progressive Ag Safety Day has day camps. They have a website where you can go to apply, and those are day-long camps that, again, the whole point is to bring the community together to get local resources, whether it's your local farm bureau or farmers union, or the local health hospital and the local health committee, the local extension office, ag teachers, high schools. There are a lot of, several programs like that out there that have resources and that will share those resources and help come and train people how to do the kinds of things that you're just suggesting there, getting together and having, whether it's a couple of hours or a day long or multiple day meetings.
I think that's, we'll just mention your website now, Dennis, that you have a link to a lot of different resources such as that, which we just spoke about. What's your website address? It
would be, actually it's kind of long. If you just type, if a person would type in Penn State Ag Safety, my website will come up.
Okay.
That's all I have, just Penn State Ag Safety, and my website will come up.
I think that's pretty key. But I think from 2 different perspectives, I think it's good to have for a local 4-H club, for instance, to annually put on a farm safety day for the kids in the local community. I think that's whether it's a local 4-H club or an FFA, I think it's a really good activity for every community to do for the kids. But more importantly, if there's 2 or 3 farmers in the local community, if they can do a safety day just at the beginning of spring planting, so around April, somewhere between April 1st to April 15th in most parts of the Midwest, before they have these kids get on these tractors to do field work, because in small towns it's pretty tough to get qualified labor. So whether it's if it's somebody that has been around equipment, whether they're teenagers or 50-year-olds that are coming out of a factory, it's good to have a day on your farm, and just if nothing else for the liability purposes, but it's also, it's a good way to prevent accidents from occurring. Would you not agree, Dennis? And how have you seen farmers organize such a days to make sure that they have, before spring planting especially, to avoid accidents? What would you recommend?
Well, there's oftentimes, throughout the U.S., there's commodity days that the county extension will put on, or 2 or 3 counties will go together and whether it's the dairy farmers or swine farmers or beef farmers or corn and bean farmers, they'll have days where they'll make presentations on safety and give the latest information, give updated information. They can do that. A lot of schools, and particularly ag teachers, will host a Saturday and a training day that farmers can volunteer or call their local ag teacher and ask if they won't do that. We have extension 4-H leaders will often do tractor machinery safety training, and that may be like a 3 or 4 meetings in order to go through different tractors, machinery, remind kids of the things that they should do. Kids, they may have done it last year, but they forget. And when they're young, it's hard to keep focused on what is really important. They've got a lot of other things that are distracting them, and so it really is important to do that. And in fact, I encourage farm families and our farmers that with employees that they ought to be having almost monthly meetings, and certainly, or even weekly meetings if they really have several kids. Just talk about one topic, pick one topic, and maybe that's coming up that week that you're going to be doing, whether it's just going into the field or starting to haul things or crossing roadways, and to talk about traffic and talk about safe operation of whatever it is. It may be handling animals, or maybe going to do something, maybe be sorting the hogs or something of that nature, or helping to vaccinate cows, whatever. Just have a meeting about that and talk about what potential hazards are, the right way to go about things. Make sure you have protective equipment, and make sure you're communicating between the employer or the parent and the child about the things that they're going to do and going to encounter.
And I would encourage, I think just on top of that, what I've seen is families write it down in a book. They have one book just for farm safety, and they have a specific time once a week. So they might say Monday morning at coffee. A lot of farms, especially hog farms, for instance, or dairy farms, they sit down with their employees just after milking, say 10 o'clock in the morning. If they can spend 5 minutes talking about safety for the week, and they write it down in a book as to what they talked about, as to one way to improve farm safety on that operation. First of all, you always have new, the farm is always evolving, and there's new safety concerns. So to be able to discuss that with all the employees and brainstorm, have the employees contribute ideas, not just the employer saying, do not do this, this, this. For the employees to be able to identify safety concerns, maybe put a guard up where it's necessary. But for you to be able to write it down in a book and with a date, and having a second signature beside that date, that you did have that employee meeting at that time, goes a long ways in proving that you're diligent in trying to be as safe of a farm as you possibly can be, which can protect your buttocks. And if you ever get sued for negligence for whatever reason on a farm with it, whether it's with employees or even with family members working for it. Would you not agree with that, Dennis? You wanted to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent idea, and it's something that I always talk about in terms of documenting what you're doing, that you have a safety program. The thing with, particularly with OSHA, and if you get into a court of law, and you don't, it is just all hearsay. Well, yeah, I did this, I told him this, I told this person that. But if you don't have it written down, it didn't happen in terms of a court of law. I can't tell you how many times I get called by lawyers, that on both sides, plaintiff and defense, because of farm accidents, and yeah, that's happens if you don't have it written down. And so, and if you don't have it, and having it signed by the person that they were at that meeting, and having the topics that were covered, that is also excellent. Again, because if it isn't written down, it really did not happen. There is a lot of training that's required by law, but particularly in the U.S. With OSHA, and as farms get larger and they have a number of employees, not just family members anymore, but employees, they are required by several different standards that they are supposed to be doing at least annual training or training on certain topics when somebody is hired new within the first 30 days or relatively when they have the first exposure. And if you're not writing that down, documenting that some way, then yeah, you're just asking for trouble, because things do happen even when you try to do it the right way, and everybody's trying to be careful and do things a safe way. Things do happen. And so I know I really try to encourage employers and then parents of kids as well. I mean, things happen with the neighbors' kids, and all of a sudden there's a lawsuit between neighbors that used to be best friends. So yeah, you know, just for your own protection, any farmer that has other people on his farm working should be documenting what they're doing and do it on a regular basis. You know, doing it once a year probably isn't going to work either. It needs to be on some regular basis that establishes you are trying to manage the hazards on your farm.
And I always think that, you know, it's great to do a one-day training seminar, or even a couple times a year. But, you know, when you have employees, you see them doing something stupid and you just shake your head sometimes because you're busy doing whatever it is that you're doing. But if you have that once a week meeting and you talk about it for 5 minutes at coffee, it might be even a family member doing something stupid. And you know, if sometimes you just don't have the energy to go correct that person on what they're doing. But if you have a family meeting and you actually have that time and place where it's okay for you to tell your father or tell your sibling, you know, I'm concerned about farm safety. How about doing it this way differently? I mean, this show is called The Business Culture of Agriculture. And I think one of the key things is we got to think through it. It's great to be high on the mountain and say, this is by the textbook how you should be doing things. But it's pretty tough to tell a family member, you know, you're doing it wrong, because you are going to get a lot of feedback that's involving cuss words quite often. But if you have that time and place to discuss it, then it's a 5-minute discussion. You could say, hey, how about we do it this way going forward? And you're not accusing somebody of doing it wrong. You're just saying, maybe we could do it better this way. And the only way you can have that 2 or 3 times on a family farm, but those meetings are not going to, the problem is you have those meetings, then you get busy, then you don't continue that culture. So I think by actually having a book where it's written in the book, then you have that culture. Oh, shucks, this week we've got to write something down. What is it we're going to brainstorm and think about? I think that's pretty key is to have a book to write the stuff down in, not only for liability issues, but also for the fact that you probably won't have that conversation after you've done it 2 or 3 times. But if you have a book and you know that every week you have to fill out the book and there's reason for that, probably liability issues, then you're actually going to create a safe culture on the farm. Have you seen farms do this, Dennis?
Well, I don't see them do it often enough. Occasionally, I run across people. I talk to people at meetings and presentations. They'll tell me that they're doing some things like this, and we always encourage it. That weekly meeting that you're advocating is just really a great idea, and it's creating a structure, so that you can talk. And when you create a structure for something like that, then you are helping to create that culture. Because that's what we need to do. In order to have a good, positive safety culture, you have to be talking about it. And you can't keep it hidden behind. And yeah, you see something and you're working and you can't really have time to talk about it. Then you don't want to stop in the middle of a process. But if you have that structure of that weekly meeting, and again, 5, 10, 15 minutes, maybe all that it takes. And actually, if you say 5 minutes, people will talk for 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes sometimes. You get them started because they know that they should talk about it. And then that creates that good culture. And then if you create that good culture, all of a sudden you find yourself correcting things out in the field yourself, or being willing to talk to somebody out in the field and correcting it right away so that it doesn't hang over or maybe be contentious when everybody's sitting down. But yeah, you have to be visible with your safety. Farmers are very visible about trying to get more milk out of their cows or more bushels out of their corn or their beans or whatever. So why don't we as visible trying to promote safety and be safety and protect ourselves and our families and our employees? So yeah, creating that good culture of safety but you have to take time like you're suggesting. It's a great idea.
Yeah. And I just want to talk about the 2 families I started doing this with, because I think the viewers take interest in this. I started with a few of my clients writing it down in a book, and because I'm a third party, I'm actually writing it down in the book for them. And obviously there's more validation if they ever do have farm safety issues. But the first family I dealt with, there was a contention between the in-laws, and the in-laws became outlaws. And there was a daughter-in-law. She was concerned about farm safety with her parents, or her husband's parents. And it got to the point that the grandparents never held those grandchildren. They the daughter-in-law and the son actually lived on the farm. It was a dairy operation, and the grandparents were not allowed to pick up the kids and hold them because there was bone of contention about farm safety. And within that family, I said, okay, nobody's perfect, but if every week we can make one improvement in farm safety on this operation. So, I mean, if you're concerned about grandma putting a grandchild, I think what happened was grandma put a 30-year-old grandson in front of her on the four-wheeler and took off down the road. Well, the daughter-in-law didn't like that. It wasn't safe. And that's understandable. I mean, the grandparents are from a different generation where that was just a natural way to how they raised. I mean, grandma had raised 5 kids, and she was a very loving mother. But farm safety was less of a concern in her generation. But through this book, this changed the dynamics of the farm. And, you know, a grandma is now active grandparent, raising those kids because there is not fear of the farm safety on that operation like there was 2 years before when I had started working with them. The second family I started working with, they had 13 kids, and they started using the kids as labor at a very early age because they thought it was part of the kids' upbringing, and their neighbors thought differently, and their neighbors actually called the child and social youth workers, and they almost took all the 13. There was 1 or 2 kids that were over 18 in that family, but they almost took, I think, 11 kids away from that farm because of fear of farm safety. And those people were the best parents you ever did see. But what we started doing is writing records, and I started writing in my office and keeping the records of myself. And the next time the child youth worker came on the farm, they didn't have a problem because they could see there was a culture of safety. And those 11 kids are with that family today because of what we did. And I know it worked in that case. I hope, you know, for your family, it can help prevent that problem if you ever have a nasty neighbor accuse you of doing the wrong thing. What do you think about those ideas, Dennis?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, you know, parents have to be smart, I think, and be conscious that the world is changing, and neighbors are coming out from, you know, cities and areas that did not grow up in a rural area, did not grow up on a farm, and are not at all familiar with the ways that, you know, we do grow up on farms, that those of us that do. And yeah, you just open yourself up to exposure. I mean, they're driving by, and if they see a 4 or 5-year-old on the front of a tractor, or going down on an ATV going at a high speed, that is not smart. And so, you know, parents have to be aware of that. And again, there are a lot of resources that would help parents. Where a lot of things happen now is with child development issues, and, you know, child development. We're talking about they have to be cognitively developed, and as well as physically developed and socially developed. And parents sometimes will put their, you know, particularly 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, perhaps in things that they did when they were growing up and nobody got hurt. So yeah, it's fine. But, you know, the child can't pay attention. They don't have the strength to handle some of the animals. Sometimes you see, even in 4-H, you'll see small kids with animals that they simply can't handle. And we certainly see, I certainly see small kids on tractors that they can't reach the clutch. You know, they can't, if a child is on a tractor and they're trying to push a clutch in, and they have to get off the seat in order to push the clutch in to stop the tractor, that's not a safe match. That child is not physically developed in order to operate that tractor. So parents, you know, and there are guidance documents out there like that would help parents ask questions, make judgments, make decisions about things like that. But yeah, and yeah, I get those kind of calls too. I've had 2 or 3 calls, you know, to try, you know, somebody wanted me to get involved in the middle of a family over child care issues on the farm. Or not child care, but child safety issues, and what a dad, you know, what mom and dad that have divorced, what dad is allowing to happen, and so yeah, those are not good things. Nobody wins in that. But, you know, doing the kind of things that we've been talking about, right? Having weekly meetings, talking to each other, I can't overemphasize how much people just need to talk about things like this, but then writing it down and documenting it is just a really good idea.
What about cognitive development? You got a few simple rules that you like to apply for cognitive development to determine whether or not a son or a daughter are of the right mind and maturity to be able to do an activity?
Well, there's like, and it, most people do, most parents think of things like on the age, what age is a child, but children don't develop at the same rate. And so you can use age to sort of start at things, but one 7-year-old may be able to focus a little bit more than another 7-year-old. But kids that can't remember instructions, you may give instructions, but if the instructions are like 4 or 5 steps and the child can't repeat those back to you, they haven't really learned that, and they may not be mentally developed well enough to do that job or that task or to execute that chore that you just gave them. So there are things like that, being able to remember 4 or 5 steps in a row and be able to repeat them back. Or can a child do it the same way, the safe way, 3 or 4 times in a row? If they do it once, and then you just turn your back and say, okay, they can do it, but the next time they may not do it the same way because, again, they don't stay focused, they don't remember everything. So, when we talk about supervision, a lot of people say, well, I'm out in the area, but supervision for a small child is in eyesight because it just happens so fast. 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds can run places and get stepping into places that they don't belong and that you don't even know they're there because they're so small. Even older children, even young teens, 12, 13-year-olds have a hard time staying focused because their mind is going through all kinds of other things and they're always somewhere else. And the peer pressure gets in, they at school and they heard, their best friend talking about what he got to do or she got to do. And, but that doesn't mean that it's safe to do. And that doesn't mean that your child should be able to do the same thing or that you want your child to do the same thing. So, yeah, you really have to look at, the 3 major issues of physical development, mental development, and social development. And all those things have to work together, and they're not just age specific. There are guidelines that you can go, and particularly if you go to the National Children's Center website, you can find those kind of guidelines that just, and everything is really as a guideline. You know your child best. But we give you this information so you'll think about this stuff. And then if you do, then you can apply it to your child and hopefully assign chores and tasks accordingly.
Yeah. And you have belief statements that you guys developed. I found them kind of interesting. Could you repeat a few of them off?
Sure. Yeah, we developed these belief statements that we want everybody, parents, employers, agribusiness, agri-services that go out on farms, ag teachers, 4-H leaders. We want everybody to sort of go along with these things. And like we say, all youth, just one of these belief statements, all youth working in ag deserve protection from workplace hazards and risks that may be associated with agricultural work sites. I don't think anybody can argue with that. Children should be protected from things that they can't protect themselves from. We say supervision of youth performing jobs or tasks should be guided by professionally recognized best practices based on developmental stages of growth. There's where we've just been talking about child developmental issues. We say things like parents, employers, agricultural educators, healthcare providers, and safety and health professionals play critical roles in designing and implementing youth agricultural safety education and training that is comprehensive, developmentally appropriate, accessible, and effective. Well, if you believe that, then you go and find out about these developmental principles and how they apply to children. So it's just a whole series of statements like this that we want everybody to buy into. And we really haven't had this sort of thing before. And these principles were written by agricultural people, not by public health people or outsiders, non-farm people. These were all written by people that represent agriculture, businesses, farm organizations, educators, etc., safety people as well, the farm safety people. And we think it's a pretty good document. And again, I should mention another website, and I will email you a couple of these websites. We have a website called extension.org/SAY for SAY. That's the Safety Project, and that's where you can find these belief statements.
And what I'll do is in the YouTube for the people watching this on YouTube, not live stream, I'll in the bottom here I'll put some links to a few of the websites. But Dennis, what is your website that is, in my perspective, the mother of all websites for farm safety? Could you just repeat that again? Your address, for viewers again.
Well,
what would they Google? What would they put in the Google?
If they Google Penn State Ag Safety, my website will come up.
Perfect. And your name is Dennis Murphy, and I just really appreciate you being on the show tonight. I think safety has to be part of every farm family's business culture. Start with the kids. Start with having a weekly conversation for 5 minutes as to how to improve farm safety for the kids. And then as everybody gets bought into the concept of doing what's right for the kids, expand the scope to farm safety for the whole family. And you'll change your business culture so that you guys have a positive future, not a negative one. Dennis, do you have any other comments or additions?
No, I think you just summarized that very well. We believe the same thing. I can assure you of that from just the conversations that we've had. And you know, you can improve things. We have improved the number of fatalities. We still are quite more hazardous than any other industry, but we really have improved things in the last, say, 20 years. And that's important for us to recognize. We have gotten better, but we still have a long way to go.
And tomorrow night we have Bill Gross from Farm Rescue, and he's going to be on the show. And Bill, basically what he does is if there's been a farm accident, he and his organization will help that farmer plant their crop in the spring or take the fall harvest off. And it's a really neat story. And he's going to be talking about his own farm family story and how he's turned a negative experience into a positive one. And so I think with that, you know, Dennis Murphy, I really appreciate that. You've been in Extension for 41 years in this field, and I can't say, I mean, you saved a lot of farm families. And I don't think that you could possibly get enough recognition for that, and we really do appreciate that. This has been the Business Culture of Agriculture. My name is Andy Junkin, and I'll look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow night. You take care, and God bless.